Greg, I feel happy for you that you haven't been watching Question Time. I think that's a really good thing after 2 decades in the parliament. But you might have left politics, but your name does keep cropping up, of course, in political debate from time to time. As we know, Scott Morrison shared the health portfolio with you for some time without the public being aware of his multiple ministry roles. Now the dust has settled a bit on that story. On reflection, do you wish you and Mr Morrison had handled that differently? Do you think the Biosecurity Act does give way too much power to one minister?
Look, I was very focused at the time of setting out clear parameters for use and limits of the biosecurity powers. These were passed unanimously by both houses of the Parliament. Just over half a decade ago, it came that I was the first to possess those powers. And so putting in place the democratic protections was an incredibly important thing. Protocols about consulting with the Cabinet and the states, only acting on medical advice, and we followed those. So the important thing was that we used it on a very limited basis. Prime Minister never exercised any powers, to the best of my knowledge, never sought to exercise any powers, in fact, never even raised that option with me during the course of it. So our approach was always to make sure that we were protecting that democratic fabric, and by putting in place protocols, even when none were required by law, that was about saying these may be extraordinary times, but that's no reason to do anything other than to protect all of the liberties and rights of Australians as significantly as we possibly could.
Greg, do you have any insights for us as to why you were told by Mr Morrison about the double ministry, but other ministers like Matthias Cormann, for example, were left in the dark? And have you had to explain some of this to Virginia Bell, who's now investigating those secret ministries?
Look, in terms of the other elements, that's not something of which I have any knowledge. In terms of the public position, we've shared the same advice with everybody, and that is it was done as a contingency, and the Prime Minister, when he announced the Biosecurity Act, announced that he was the co-holder of those powers under federal health.
So no regrets about how all that has played out since that decision was taken?
Always reviewing, but my focus, honestly, has been on how we continue to take the health of Australians forward, and how we continue to take the mental health of Australians forward. And that's where my mind is at, that's where my focus is at. And when you look back over that period, there are probably two things that stand out. One is that we ended 2020 with, as being one of the few countries in the world with what's called a negative excess death rate. So in the great year of the COVID pandemic, fewer people passed in Australia than would have passed under ordinary expectations for 2020. We ended 2021 as having one of the highest, if not the highest, median net personal wealth of any country in the world. So not just average, but median, meaning more people at a higher level than any other country. And so those are two enormous achievements. And when you think in all of the OECD, 38 countries, there was only us and Japan when we left office with a vaccination rate above 80% whole of population, a death rate below 300 per million, and an unemployment rate of 4% or lower. And we're one of only two countries in the world in the OECD to have achieved that. And that's the measure of, as a country, what we've achieved. Always, every day, you look to do better in every element of life, whether it's governance, media, private sector, academia, sport, family life. Always you're looking. But as a nation, I think we should be immensely proud of what we achieved. And I just want to take this opportunity to thank the medical profession and all of those involved in the public health response, as well as the Australian public. We couldn't have done it without it. Other countries had great fractures. The thing that really marked Australia out was the outcomes, but also the fact that we held together as a nation. And that says there's something pretty good about this country.
Greg, I can understand you don't want to dwell on the secret ministries issue, and to be fair, that's not what I asked you on to talk about today, but I do just want to pick up on my earlier question, which was, have you been interviewed by Virginia Bell and her team, and what are you expecting her to find at the end of her inquiry?
I'll leave the responses. We said at the time when we were asked about a month ago that we'd respond, which we did, and dealt with that exactly in the terms. In fact, I was thanked by Virginia Bell for both the timeliness and the comprehensiveness of the response.